After decades of religious turmoil, Protestantism finally gained permanent dominance in England after the succession to the throne of Queen Elizabeth I. England's victory over the Spanish Armada gave it naval dominance of the Atlantic Ocean and a vibrant sense of nationalism. England's first colony at Jamestown was saved from failure by John Smith's leadership and by John Rolfe's introduction of tobacco. Powhatan was an Indian leader who ruled tribes in the James River area of Virginia. After the defeat of the coastal Tuscarora and Yamis Indians by North Carolinians, the remaining southeastern Indian tribes formed an alliance to wage warfare against the whites. The Dutch colony of New Netherland represented the most ambitious colonial enterprise of the Dutch government. The shipboard agreement by the Pilgrim Fathers to establish a body politic and submit to majority rule. Plymouth was a small colony that eventually merged into Massachusetts Bay as a whole city upon a hill. For most of their early history, the colonies of Maryland and Virginia contained far more men than women. I'm telling darkness from my eyes on you. The primary cause of Bacon's rebellion was the poverty and discontent of many singly young men unable to acquire land. Most of the slaves who eventually reached North America were originally captured by West African coastal tribes and sold to European slave merchants. The Congregational Church of the Puritans contributed to the development of basic ideas of democracy as expressed in the New England Town Meeting. Immigrants who received passage to America in exchange for a fixed term of labor were indentured servants. Royal African Company was an English company that lost its monopoly on the slave trade in 1698. The most honored professional in colonial America was the clergyman. The primary source of livelihood for most colonial Americans was agriculture. An unfortunate group of involuntary immigrants who ranked even below indentured servants on the American social scale were convicts and paupers. The triangular trade involved the sale of rum, molasses, and slave among ports of New England, Africa, and West Indies. The War of Succession was the conflict with the War of Jenkins' Ear and ended with the return of Louisbourg to France. Robert de La Salle was the French empire builder who explored the Mississippi Basin and named it after his monarch. The Sugar Act of 1764 was the first law passed by Parliament that raised tax revenues in the colonies for the Crown. It increased duty on foreign sugar imported from the West Indies. The Quartering Act in 1765 measure required that certain colonies provide food and quarters to the British troops. Townshend Act of 1767 persuaded Parliament to pass these regulations with an import duty on glass, while lead, paper, and paint and tea. This was an indirect customs duty payable at American ports. Committee of Correspondence were created by the American colonies in order to maintain communication with one another. They were organized in the decade before the Revolution when communication between the colonies became essential.